E360 TV proudly presents messages of inspirational stories. Live streaming now to millions of devices, including Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, with your host, Donna and Jim, producer and host, Jim Grant, producer and host, along with Michaela Vidal, administrator and host, and Gaia Ginwa Balconi Wada, editor-in-chief.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Messages of Inspirational Stories. Today, Jim, part 4 of the lost art of verbal communication.
I'm sorry, what was that again? I wasn't listening. And we talk about communication this week. We've hit it all. We've talked about the verbal, the nonverbal, the body language. Oh, my goodness. But it's so important. It's funny how you can say something one way and someone will totally misunderstand what you're saying. It's
interpreted totally different.
Last night, I was communicating with a guy, and it was on Facebook. And he actually made a comment to me, Donna. You've received a lot of information from me, emails, texts, and all that. He says, "Why is your English so bad?" I didn't know how to respond to that. So what I did, I said, well, yeah. Because I don't know where he was coming from with that one. I really don't. So my response to him was, that's because I only took Spanish in high school. I mean, it just kind of like, why would you say? Because I looked and I reread what I said and as if I, goofed up and left out a word or something, but I don't know. But it's very easily to get misunderstood when you're talking to people or trying to communicate.
Right.
And Donna, how many times have we both heard in situations after a meeting and someone interprets it one way and someone says, no, I thought we were going to do it this way.
Absolutely.
And that happens all the time, especially if you are an entrepreneur and you're trying to get your message across, you're trying to communicate with clients that you can actually help.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a major disconnect.
It really can be. It really can be. And one of the ways that can be totally just nipped in the bud, if you will, is to reiterate at the end of what you're saying.
Yeah. And also, too, to ask for some good feedback.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about, this particular thing that I just said? How do you feel about that?
Does that sound like something we can all get behind?
Yeah. Because if you ask how people feel, they're more apt to communicate with you than what you think. What do you think about that? Well, they don't want to confront you or anything. Sounds good.
Right.
But how do you feel about that? Well, they're more open to talking about how they feel.
Right.
And Emerson covered that is either yesterday or day before. Very good. And we are so honored to have Emerson on our team. He helps us out. And I'm going to be taking a day off here, and you'll have Emerson and Donna, and I'll guarantee you nobody will miss me because they're both that good. But before we get into the day, let's talk about a couple of national holidays.
Yes. So I love this first one. National Junk Food Day.
A lot of us live for many years on junk food. If we couldn't make it on junk food, we wouldn't be able to make it at all.
Right. Well, we eat really healthy, and I really kind of, I pay particular attention to what goes into our system. But, if you have some French fries or something, as long as you don't live in that area, it's okay.
And don't tell anybody, especially your cardiologist. That's my secret. Yeah, because it's, you got to treat yourself once in a while because after my open heart surgery and 4 bypasses and all that, I mean, I cut out a lot of things, obviously, and my weight dropped from 172. I'm down to about 155 without doing anything drastic or radical. And my attitude is I'm gonna let my body pick the number. It knows better than me. And
Well, it's in my opinion, it is the worst thing that we can do is go by the number on the scale.
yes, ma'am, because that scale's a liar.
Well, it's
You-
ridiculous because it just depends on your body type. So,
Mhm.
what my
Yeah.
size is and what my weight is
Yeah.
is not going to be the same for somebody else who's, say, my age and my height and maybe close to my body size.
Yeah.
Right. So it just depends on the makeup inside. But to
Mhm.
me, it's more, Jim, about the way you feel and how
Yeah.
you look
Mhm.
and how, of course, how healthy you are.
Oh, yeah, that's so true because there were some things obviously I need to cut out and definitely cut back on. One was cheese, and if there was such a thing as evolution, my family became a family of rats because we love cheese. But no,
That
but it
explains
was,
a lot, Jim.
yeah, I know it. I know. But really, it is tough to cut back on some of the things that you love, and I
Right.
mean, it really is. But it comes down to one thing, that is what's more important to you. And I was looking up the history of that particular day, where it all started. They say it started back in 1860 with a guy who owned a fish and chips shop. Get my tongue going there. At Tommyfield Market in Oldham, England. And then Berlin-based Max Schilloff invents the first automat, which serves simple food and drinks. That was in 1896.
Nice.
And then the king of burgers, let me say, automats come to America. Joseph Horn and Frank Hardart, they brought it in automat along with fast food to New York City. 1921 was the king of burgers. That was White Castle began its franchise, but opened the very first food hamburger stand in Wichita, Kansas. We normally think McDonald's kicked it off, but no, it was White Castle back in 1921. This one here you're going to like. In 1937, Sweet Junk. Vernon Randolph launches donut and coffee house chain Krispy Kreme Donuts in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And it's been a good one. And in 1953, McDonald's has opened its first franchise. So that gives you a little bit of history about the national today of it being a junk food day. But Donna, we gotta be able to treat ourselves once in a while. That's important, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Unless you're my husband. If I took away his ice cream, I don't think
He'd die. He'd die, huh?
I don't think he could function.
Yeah,
He said
poor
to me,
guy.
I was teasing him the other day, and he said, "Oh, that's fighting words, woman."
That sounds like Edgy. Poor Edgy, he's a poor guy. Him and Donna, they live in a cat house. And I mean, yeah, he has to put up with it. And, another one of our national holidays for today, that is, Donna, this is something that when I say the word Lamington, what does that mean to you? And I'm thinking when I first saw it, I thought, is that carpentry or what? Like lamination or something? But
Right, right.
I was way off base, wasn't I, Donna?
Little bit.
Would you like to share with them what that laminating day is all about?
Absolutely. So this is celebrated in Australia, and it is delicious dessert that is loved by people living in the Southern Hemisphere. So Lamington is a dessert consisted of a buttery, flavorful sponge cake that is covered with chocolate sauce. And Lamingtons are covered with coconut shavings or other types of coconut. And it's a cake known as most Australian cake. So Lamingtons are eaten on special occasions like Australia Day. And since the dessert is popular and important to Australia culture, it was honored with a special day to celebrate it.
That's amazing. But describe the ingredients one more time. I just want to drool one more time on TV. I dare you.
But Nobody needs that.
I know. Well, hey, guys, I tried. I mean, you got to have a little something to go with your coffee, but
Right,
okay.
right.
I'm
But it's
struck
kind of
out there.
interesting because
Mhm.
it goes on to say that it's also popular in New Zealand, and that the dessert is believed to have originated in Queensland. Lamingtons are named after either Lord Lamington, who was the governor of Queensland in the late 19th century, or
Mhm.
his wife, Lady Lamington.
Mhm. Hmm.
Yeah,
Wow. Think about that. Naming desserts after people. I mean, wonder who angel food was named after.
right?
But I tell you, going on, this is a nice one too. This is the National Craft for Your Local Shelter Days. And for your local shelter days, it's, that July 21st is the day called, they're calling for all crafters to be able to do it. And your do-it-yourselfers is, anything you can do to help make some toys
Mm-hmm.
for some of the dogs and cats in shelters, because everybody loves to see a puppy playing with a toy. They
Right.
really do.
Or a
And
little
a cat,
kitten, or
yeah.
of course
Dixie
with
has this.
cats, just give them a box.
Oh yeah. We're talking downtown there. Yeah. And Dixie has these little, Evie picks up these little mouses for her. And she'll take one, get one in her claw, and she'll flip that thing up in the air and then
Hmm.
catch it with her mouth on the way down. So, I
Yep.
mean, you think about animals, they're just like us. I mean, they got to find some way to be entertained, entertain themselves and pass the time, because what's more boring for a little dog or cat to be stuck in a cell?
Right. Well,
That's what
and
it
they
is.
get, they shut down in shelters.
Yeah. Yeah, they
They
do.
shut down in shelters. So,
Yeah.
anything that we can do to better, the animals in shelters, and quite frankly, right now, Jim, we
Mhm.
are at an all-time high with animals, all the shelters bursting at the seams
Mm. Wow, I didn't
all
know that.
over the country. It is absolutely horrible. Everything that I have seen, I mean, literally all across the country, shelters are bursting at the seam with animals.
Wow. Mm. Donna, that's very sad. It really is, because I tell you, I'm like a lot of people, and you're the same way. If you had 60,000 acres backyard and you had $40 billion, the animal shelters would be empty.
That's a
you know,
fact.
I mean, think
That
about
is
it,
a fact.
because they're just, you know, the love and the inner. And what's so interesting about animals is that I don't care if it's what it is. Every animal has its own unique personality, their own little spirit, and they're just,
They're special,
yeah. We could talk about animals the rest of the day, so, but that's not what this show's about. So
right?
I'd like to start off, if I may. We're talking about the lost art of communication and discovering. This article was written by a guy by the name of Matthew Mosley, and he said something very interesting here. He says, throughout a life spent moving from one organizational challenge to another, he says, I've noticed that one thread has woven the whole experience together: the unbridled power of good communication and storytelling in successful people. So, Don, what he's saying there, the unbridled power, which means it has no limits, of
Right.
good communication, successful people blend that in with storytelling. And just last week, we had a whole week on storytelling, didn't we?
Mhm. We did.
Wow. And, Donna, I know that you're fantastic in being able to communicate and sharing your story. And it's so important for and to have a cat. And she can do that with a cat on her lap. She's very talented. But
Multitasker.
yeah, but it's so interesting, and it's so critical for us to be able to create our story.
It
And
is.
and
And it's
Donna,
something that you have to practice because
mhm,
It's also something that if you're not passionate about,
Mm-hmm.
it shows.
Yes, ma'am, it does.
It shows. If you do not have a passion about
Mm-hmm.
what it is you do, it is going to show. And I've
Mm-hmm.
said this forever, that your energy will show up before you ever hit the room.
Oh, yeah. And ladies and gentlemen, even though we put the show on last week about storytelling, and now we're talking about the lost art of communication, which goes hand in hand,
Right.
my point being, after having listened to Donna and listened to Emerson and some of the things that they brought to the party, I learned a lot. And one of the things I'm going to do, I've got a article that I'm writing, got a couple of them as a matter of fact. But on this one article, I saw, hey, wait a minute, I need to rewrite this based on what Donna and Emerson taught me during last week, the art of storytelling. I need to talk about this more in the third person, looking in from the outside, because rather than to say, this is my story, this is what happened to me. Well, that doesn't bring any value to people, especially with the content of what my message is about.
Right.
It's kind of like, wow, you want to be able to, how can I say this, Donna? People that are successful storytellers, they get the people involved in that story, don't they?
You bring them in on an emotional basis.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the easiest ways to do that is say something along the lines of, has anything like this ever happened to you or one of your loved ones?
Yeah.
Do you know what that feels like to be that scared?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
that closed up because all of a sudden everything hit at once.
Yeah.
And you're now on an overload. Do you know how that feels?
Oh, yeah.
So there are ways that we can bring the audience in to your story without it being. So I know what that feels like because I was there. I did it. Right? I was involved. It was scary for me.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
Yeah.
that was just super.
You were singing my song because I was going to give that same thing, because in my story, the article I'm writing, I started out and I used phrases like, or expressions like, imagine how I felt, when this happened. Imagine how, what I was feeling going through this. I need to turn that around to the third person. Imagine how you would feel if you heard these words. Imagine how you would feel if this happened to you. And draw them in, because I is all about me. You is all about
you.
Mm-hmm. And people, and people just don't want to listen to someone talk about themselves all the time. That's boring.
Right. They don't want to listen to them prattle on about it.
Yes, because we've had people, Donna and I both have known people for years to, hey, I want to be on your show. I've got a great story.
Right.
And Don McGrath was one of the first. He's a good friend of ours. He's the key guy behind the 6-minute webinar. Don and I, we work in that area there. And if you got our email up there already, if you'd like to know how to do a great story in 6 minutes or so.
Sorry, that was the
that's
cat.
Okay. Blame it on the cat. Okay, yeah. She had a hiccup. Oh, there. Oh, yes. I did not do it. Look at that. That's an innocent face if I ever saw one.
Yeah, Niner is not innocent.
But after here, I'm sitting here, look at the cat. Forgot what I was going to say. But anyway, the 6-minute webinar, Don was talking about when people tell him, I've got a great story. And Don says, who cares? Nobody wants to hear it.
Right.
And the guy, and I was standing there, and the guy said, kind of like, because it's so true. When you write your story, if you want to communicate a good lesson, step back and change the eyes to you, for an example, and then rephrase it to get them involved emotionally. Because what Donna said, getting them involved emotionally, she hit the nail on the head.
Right. Have you ever had a time in your life where illness has affected you or a member of your family and communication was almost non-existent?
Yeah.
Has that ever happened with, say, your own children?
Hmm.
Then you can say, I know how that feels.
Yeah.
So you can bring them in by saying, this is the scenario, and then you can say, I understand how that feels,
Hmm.
without it all being about me, the person.
Yeah.
But you're still connecting
Hmm.
as a person.
Hmm. Exactly.
You're still connecting by saying, I
Hmm.
understand exactly how that feels.
Amen. And I'll tell you another great thing too. That is if you can talk about a third person.
Hmm.
Think about that. Like a client that you may have helped or something like that.
Right.
Just say, I'm going to call this person John or Mary, whatever, whatever gender that you choose. And when Mary came to me, this is what she was going through. Because now you're sharing information about a third person, but
Right.
it's blending in perfectly with your story.
Right.
That is a masterful. I mean, look at all the TikTok. I call it TikToker stars. The ones who are love to be on TikTok because it's free and they got a cell phone. Hey, I'd be a star on TikTok. Yes, you can, and a lot of them are.
Hmm.
And there's one guy I like to watch on YouTube. I find some of his stories interesting. I haven't seen all of them. Is Mr. Ballen, Ballen? I think his name is John Allen. He's a former Navy SEAL, I think. Anyway, he likes to talk about mysteries that happen, people that got lost or strange things that happen. And he's very good in his storytelling. He's got over 6 million followers on Facebook, or I mean on YouTube or whatever. But see, that is the power of storytelling.
Hmm.
And for you network marketers, rule number one, when you communicate to people that you want to attract into your tribe, don't listen to what the bozos tell you about the hot list, the cold, the warm list, the cold list, all that stuff. Don't even go there. Because if the product or service that you're offering is not a good fit for the potential client, no one is going to sell something they don't believe in.
Right.
Because Donna, you and I have talked about we're reaching out to advertisers and things like that. We will not allow an advertiser to advertise on our show if we do not believe in their product.
Right. That's a
And
fact.
what does that say about us, Donna?
Well, it says that we have integrity, because if we can't get behind our marketing partners
Mm-hmm. Right.
and they can't get behind us,
Mm-hmm.
then
It's not a good fit.
it's not a good fit. It's a, if you will, a false
Mm-hmm.
advertisement for the sake of
Exactly.
the almighty dollar, and that is just not how we are wired.
You're exactly right, because I had I've told this story a couple of times before, but it's true. It gives a classic example of what we're talking about. When you're communicating, you got to be in perfect harmony in all areas of your life. That's the message here.
Mhm.
But I didn't even know I had over 2 million downloads on my radio show. And this divorce attorney contacted me and says, "Hey, I'd like to advertise on your podcast, your radio show, because it's a live radio show, but it's converted to a podcast. It's on all the major podcast stations, iHeartRadio, Apple, all the places."
Amazon,
Oh,
iHeart, iTunes, Google
yeah.
Podcasts, Spotify, Radio Public,
Hmm.
Castbox, FM, and many more,
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
to name a few.
And see the way these things are, these little bots they have, they're little robots. They call them bots. They go shopping, what's called harvesting. And if they see this show here and this show there, it's got to be a good show. So we'll pull it and we'll put it on this. We'll sell it to this. It's kind of like an email address. All these little bots are finding your email address, and you get all these emails going like, "Where did this come from?" Same thing.
Right.
And but anyway, this attorney called me, wanted to advertise on my show. Your future is now. And it's a positive show like this one here. And he said, "I like to advertise." I said, "Well," and I never thought about an attorney. And I said, "Well, what do you do?" He said, "Well, I specialize in online divorces." And I go, "Well, I don't think that's a good fit for our show."
Right.
Long story short, it came down to him trying to convince me that his money was good. And I simply told him, I said, I appreciate you thinking about me, but I'm not for sale. And we never accepted him as an advertiser on the
Right.
radio station because it's not a good fit. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back right after this brief message. In case you got 250 pounds of dead weight in your house you want to get rid of, listen to
Our
well,
next sponsor.
yeah, that would have been good, wouldn't it? The neighbors would have been loving that one, wouldn't they?
Oh, goodness.
I tell you. But when we talk about discovering the lost art of communication, this guy here, I'm going on with his article, and Donna, I want you to pick up there and fill in. Matthew Mosley, he says, but one question persists. Now, remember, this is the guy that made that great, fantastic quote, the unbridled power of good communication and storytelling is exactly what successful people use. Boom. Plain, simple, short, sweet, and brief. You got to have a good communication. You got to tell a story. Mm-hmm. He said, but one question persists. If communication is so important and we're so interconnected more than ever before, then why are most managers and leaders and everybody else, why are we so bad at it? That's a good question.
Well,
go ahead, Donna, please.
There is something to be said about that. How many people do we know or have experienced when, we've worked at jobs who there may be great managers, but they're horrible leaders. Or they're a great leader, but they're a horrible manager.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that for a minute.
Yeah, that's right.
They should go hand in hand.
Yeah, exactly. There are two separate things there. There really are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you can be a great motivator and a great leader, but you could be just shambles at running the daily operations, a total wreck. I've known people like that. I really have. But we're interconnected today the way we are electronically, but yet it seems the more electronically we become involved, the less people-oriented we become.
Well, that's especially true for our younger generation, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's actually a friend of mine's son, who is just an outstanding young man. Mm-hmm. And he was talking to me about his classes that his guidance counselor for college had sent him, things that he can take. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Ooh, public speaking, that's just scary." And I'm like, "Why is that?" And he said, "Well, I hate it." He said, "Well, I'm better at it now than I was in high school, but I just hate it."
Oh yeah.
And so I said, "Can we dive into that for a minute?" He said, "Sure." And I said, you and I have discussed this before. You are not typical for your age, but your generation has lost the art of personal communication, verbal communication, because there's so much electronics. Mm-hmm. And so that you can hide behind the image you portray on social media, on the computer, etc. I said, let me tell you this. So he's going into programming, right? Computer programming. I said, that is a very high-end, very competitive field, is it not? Mm-hmm. He said, yes, it is. I said, okay, then. I'm going to tell you the same thing I've told my children. Say you're up for, you're already hired, and there's a position coming open. And say Hank right next to you is a little bit more qualified. But you're both up and you're in the final review for this position to be, accelerate your career. I have always told my children that good manners and learning how to speak can take you right over the edge. And let me explain why. I said, so you go in and you have this interview. You shake the person's hand, male or female, does not matter. You present yourself in a professional manner. You're not afraid to communicate. You're not afraid to look them in the eye. You're not fidgeting. Your hands aren't going like this. Your feet aren't, flipping around in circles.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and you come across very strong. You may not have quite as much experience as Hank, but here comes Hank. Well, hey, Jim, thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim's talking, and there's Hank doing this. I got it in the bag, is what he's thinking in his head. And I said, you need to learn how to speak, because throughout your rest of your career, you're going to be speaking, whether
Mm-hmm.
you're presenting something to the team or you're trying to get somebody to buy something that you want.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
it's super important, especially for our younger generation, to understand that this is not something that's going to go away just because we have the technical aspect of our lives that we have in full force now that we never used to. Growing up, we didn't have this, Jim.
No, we did our own. We were real men and women in those days. But
we typed it out and we wrote it on paper.
That's right, or carved it in stone. Wrote it in. It reminds me of the wonderful song, beautiful song back around 1955, 56. I was just a kid then, but I remember a song, and I'm trying to remember the guy's name, Pat Boone, writing love letters in the sand. Isn't that beautiful? Writing love letters in the sand? And people don't think communication's here to stay. Well, it's always been here to stay since the beginning of time. Then explain why, with the artificial intelligence or robots and all that, they're trying to teach them how to communicate with us,
right?
How to talk, and that's a clear thing. That's a very good point, because you may not be the highest one on, up on the selection block. Let me put it like that. But if you're looking, like we covered in body language, if you're leaning forward and you're looking at the person, and you mirror and match that person. Like I'm just going to ask Donna to do something and watch how I mirror and match her.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, now the camera's reversed. I got to do it like this or whatever. But anyway, but you see what I mean. She does that. She does that. She leans forward. I'm going to lean forward. If she leans back a little bit, I'll lean back a little bit.
Right.
Because that's saying I'm in tune with you.
Exactly.
My mind's not out in left field. My mind's not on what I'm going to do tonight. My mind's not kind of on the weekend where we're going to get down and we'll get down. And we'll get up just to get down, as the old saying goes. We're going to boogie. That's not where I'm at right now. Right now, I am totally locked on you. You're a VIP with me. I sincerely want this position. I sincerely want to have a good relationship with you. Regardless, whether it's a personal relationship, like boyfriend, girlfriend, whether it's a business relationship, whether it's a marketing relationship, whatever the relationship is, social, whatever, you want to let that person know they're important.
Well, and another way, I'm sorry, but another way to help land the job is say, I would love nothing more, Jim, than for you to mentor me.
Oh, yeah.
Mentor me. So that I can learn what you have learned. And if need be, I'll drink from a fire hose. I am so eager to learn and have the knowledge that you have to go forward in this company, and this is my career.
Yeah. And like every time we start a show, we like to talk about National Day. We like to have a little fun there and cover some fun things. But with all of the information on the internet today, what if you wanted to go to work for ABC Corporation? I'm just picking out 3 initials there just for make an example. And you go online, you read up on ABC, and you mirror and match what Donna and I do. We talk about 1865. Of course, ABC may not have been around that long, but you start, sharing some information. Yeah, what I found interesting about ABC, and the reason why I like to work here is because back in 1993, you guys your company did this, and I really like that. Or 1998, you were involved with this charity, and that resonates with me.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to show, hey, this person is resourceful. And all you're doing is talking about something that they already know about.
Right.
More so than, how much is this job pay an hour?
Right.
That's a major disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
You should already know that before you go in, or you haven't done your homework.
Right. Right.
You've already struck out before you got up to the plate, son.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you know, Donna, going on with this, I love what this guy says here. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm reading from the chief executive, and this gentleman's name is Matthew Mosley. And I really like the way he says this. Communication is the lubricant that keeps the engine of humanity running. Oh, my goodness gracious. Oh. And he goes on to give an example. He says, in our bodies, when cells don't communicate properly, it can indicate illness. And when nations don't communicate properly, it creates wars. And if you don't communicate with your spouse, I wonder how that's going to work out. What do you think there, Donna?
Right. Right. Well, it is true. I mean, we know that communication, a breakdown of communication, can lead to divorce anywhere. It can lead to divorce with your spouse. It can lead to divorce with a business partner. It can, it can lead to divorce all over, right?
Oh, yeah.
It is a complete and total disconnect. So learning how to communicate is absolutely critical, and body language is such a big part of it, because I could be very calm. Well, okay. I have to rephrase that. I have one of those, if you know me, I have one of those faces that can tell you my mood. It takes a lot for me to try and disguise it. It takes a lot. It's just, who I am. If I'm irritated, it usually is showing in my eyes. But if we sit and our arms are crossed and we're like talking with whoever, and you're like, yeah, I get it. You're saying yes, but your body language with your arms being crossed is saying, nope, BS. You're not coming in, and I don't believe it, and I'm not doing it.
Yeah. And you see, and if you're standing or sitting in a car across a parking lot and you see someone out there and you can't hear the words, but they're going, good and well, that's not a happy birthday to you today, singing their song. I mean, that's just your body language screams in volumes how you are, what you're thinking, and all that. And that's why a lot of good storytellers, they use their hands to get people involved in the emotion. They want to, through the airways or through the power of the video, they want to be able to, not just sit there and sound like a human parrot and just, look around and talk monotone, because there's no feeling there. There's no emotion there.
And some of us, like me, I use my hands a lot. It's just, I always have. Now, that's fine. But Jim and I both know people who will talk, and they're so excited about what they do that they get their hands going like this. Hey, and oh my gosh, isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
Isn't that awesome? And they're doing it right in front of their face. And it's like, oh my God, I can't concentrate on the words with all this going on in front of me. So when you use your hands, the industry standard, if you will, is definitely below the chin, right? You don't want to bring your hand up to your face, because when you do that, people follow the hand, and then they're following that, and they're losing what you're saying.
Yeah. And the hand language, that's very good. And I agree with you, Don. I'm glad you brought that up, because the hand language should only be used when you want to illustrate a point.
Right. And you can talk with your hands.
Oh, yeah.
And bring them out. So in the camera, if I'm talking, my hands would be lower. But if I'm talking, and I'd be like, and so, because that's an emphasize. You're emphasizing what you're saying. And in this, this is what this was, this is how this happened. You're
Hmm.
emphasizing it, but you're not making your hands into a frantic action.
Hmm. Yeah, it's very powerful because what we're talking about here is just basic stuff. A lot of you might say, well, gee, I already know a lot about that, but we need to practice it because even though I've been to, I'm a certified presentator, I've graduated 3 instructor training courses and all of this, that, and the other, and got all these many years of experience. Last week, I learned something in storytelling from Donna and Emerson, and that's why I want to change it to the third person to make it more interesting because I am only interesting to myself.
Mhm.
Because everything in life to make you great, the first thing you got to do is what? Humble yourself.
Right.
See, we don't like to do that. We don't like to give up control, but it's necessary. And also, too, I remember one time, I'm going to share this point with you. I was real excited to speak at this luncheon because I had some great information. And the person who I'd briefed who invited me, I said, this is what I'm going to be talking about. He says, oh my goodness, Jim, that's dynamite. And so I got pumped up. And I went on stage and I'm standing in front of everybody. I said, I got to hold my hands up higher for the camera, but they're
Right.
about mid chest. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so happy to be here. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be able to share this information with you. And people now, because I'm excited, I got my hands together, which is positive. Don't put your hands in your pocket. Don't put your hands
Right.
behind you because that's a signal that you're hiding something from us.
Right.
The hands in the pocket, this guy is trying to get into my pocket. That's the way our bird brain works. So don't do that. But I saw people, and looking around the class and see people. What is their
Mhm.
body language telling me?
They're
I've got their
interested.
yeah.
You've got their attention.
So now guess what I had to do? I had to deliver the goods.
You had to keep it. You had to keep the
I
attention.
had to earn it. I had to earn it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? Another way in body language, especially if you are speaking in front of somebody, and maybe somebody has already gone on stage before you, and
Mhm.
maybe they were a little lackluster, okay? Maybe they were
Mm.
a little dull, and the audience is a little sleepy, okay? And it's happened. One of the best things you can do is walk out and I never introduce myself because if I've already been introduced, that would be silly and it would be egotistic, and that's just not in my wheelhouse. But you walk out and you look at everybody and you smile and you
Mhm.
say, wow, you guys are an incredible group.
Mhm. Mhm.
Every single one of you. I am so honored
Mhm.
to be here before you.
Mhm.
Now
Mhm.
you have just complimented everybody in the room
Mhm.
and you have woke them up by
Mhm.
giving them a compliment.
Yeah. And everything you do, it's got to fit you, your
Right.
personality. Never be a
Don't,
human parrot.
yeah, don't try and be somebody else's personality. Don't try and
No.
take on
No.
somebody else's, if somebody else has an accent. And,
Mhm.
I'm one of those people. I think accents are
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah.
But there's no point in me trying to take on a Scottish brogue when I can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't fit any more than, it just doesn't fit you. And comedians do this a lot when they're wanting to get the audience involved and all that. They'll say, did you guys see in the paper the other day, or did you see that article came up, blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
And so you can use a story like that to really draw them in.
Right.
And it's amazing how that works because people love stories. A good story. I mean, how many times you ever heard someone, Donna, you're an avid reader. You pick up a
Mhm.
book, it's good. You have a problem doing what?
Oh, I have a problem putting it down.
Exactly, because if it ain't worth a hoot, it's out of here. I was
Right?
asking Evelyn about an author she used to read. I said, you used to read him. She says, I said, didn't you? She says, Jim, that was back in the 90s. Okay. Was I present? Physically, I guess I was, but no, I'm serious. But I asked her, I said, why'd you quit reading him? She says, well, he's a great storyteller, but his stories were just too dark for me. And see, in your storytelling, of course, he's a very successful author. I'm not going to mention his name, but he has a huge following because they love his story. Not
Right.
everybody's going to love your story. So
Right.
what?
Doesn't matter.
If you ran for public office, would everybody vote for you? No. So what? If you
Right.
won. But my point being is don't try to please everybody. Let your story be a true reflection of you.
Mm-hmm.
Communicate that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I tried to pretend that I was a rapper and I'm going to use the lyrics of my youth, like, rappers use the lyrics of their youth. I mean, how would it sound me to get out there on a stage and want to be a rapper using the terminologies and the phrases from my youth? I mean, it's kind of like that old comedian says, call me Mr. Flintstone because I can make you bedrock. I mean, that'd be ridiculous. And I'm using that as a ridiculous example because
Right.
that's how ridiculous you would look and sound to your, everybody else out there. The only person you're fooling is yourself, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and another thing that I would suggest, especially if you're getting ready to go into speaking,
Mm-hmm.
start watching people on YouTube. Find people who do interviews. I find that
Mm.
fascinating. There
Yeah.
are certain people who interview for major news stories, on
Mm-hmm.
television, that I watch their interviewing style because I'm
Mm-hmm.
absolutely fascinated by it.
Oh, yeah.
And you can learn so much
Mm.
by watching people who interest you. Because
Mm-hmm.
when they interest you, whether you are aware of it or not, you have an energy to that person that's pulling you.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore you can identify with it. And
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to emulate them 100%.
No,
But what I
no.
am saying is because there is something in their energy that connects with your energy, you can take that and make it your own.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Donna. We think a lot alike because what you're actually doing when you're saying, I want to be a great, speaker like this. I want to be able to deliver my story or communicate with my audience or whatever it might be. What you're actually doing is you're watching that individual and you're picking up on the positive traits. You are training your brain to be the
Right.
real you, the best you that you could possibly be. That's why it's valuable.
So one of the other things that I would suggest that's very important, and the more you do something, understand the more comfortable you get. Number one
Mhm.
is videotape yourself. Videotape yourself doing a presentation. You are going to see where you have some human issues, right? We all do. I have a tendency, and I know this, when I'm thinking about something and I'm trying to get the right word, I put my eyes up. I always
Mhm.
roll my eyes up to my head. And I
Shooting
and I
for the light.
right. And I try not to do that, but I know that I do that.
Mhm.
But what I'm saying is you're going to hear, especially if you're not used to speaking and your communication through your body language,
Mhm.
you are going to find out so many tells that you do. You may use a word over and over and over and over and over and over again. And then when you listen to yourself, you think, well, that sounds ridiculous.
Yes, yes,
Been
yes.
there, done that. Jim,
Mhm.
have you not done this?
I do it all the time.
Right?
That's because I
So
got a limited vocabulary.
so it's really important. And one of the things that we do when we speak, and especially when we're new to it, is we have a tendency to use a word. And it can be any word, but a lot of people use the word.
Uh-huh.
And so let me tell you how that came about. Well, it all started like this. And we continue to use it.
Mhm.
Or some people will twist words and they'll say, and so that is. And so that is how it was done. That is. And it could, there's just certain words that we take and twist. So that's why I
Mhm.
say it's really, really important to
Mhm.
videotape yourself and find out what words that you use over and over again that
Mhm.
are fluff words that don't need to be made there, that detract from the value you are trying to give to your audience.
Mhm. Yeah, you're exactly right, Donna. And we're running short on time, but we're going to be back tomorrow. Donna and I will be, and we're going to be talking about how communications, how we relate to our world, to build common connections with people in our lives,
Right.
professionally, personally, and all that. And I love what this says here about the most important questions you to ask when attempted to form a communication strategy. In your message, what are you saying?
Oof.
What's in it for them? Not you.
Yep.
It's not what you want to say. What's in it for them? And you target the right audience. So who are you saying it to? And the third thing is tactics.
Right.
And how are you saying it? What's the detail of it? Because strategy always is the first thing that you do.
Right.
You got to organize your strategy, who you're talking to, what you're talking about, and what's in it for them, and all that. And we're going to cover some of that tomorrow. And
We are.
I'll tell you, Donna, we're almost out of time, but these shows go so fast for us.
They do. They do. But we know a lot of you already know this.
Oh
But
yeah,
there may
oh, yeah.
be people out there who don't.
Mhm.
And that's why we chose to cover this, because
Yeah.
we just don't want people to have a lost way, that
Mhm.
they're not sure, especially our younger generation. They're a
Mhm.
future.
Mhm. Sure, sure.
They're a future. So whatever we can do to reach out and help anybody, you know what? That's what we're here for. That's
Mhm.
why we do this each and every day, 5 days a
Oh
week.
yeah, absolutely. Because also too, like I said before here in the show, with all the years of experience that I've got and all the education I got, I forgot the basics of storytelling.
Mhm.
And we all forget the basics. How many times have hmm, I'm going to use an example here, and I'm trying to. Anyway, I had a physical ailment, and from time to time, nothing major, but from time to time, let me just use, let's say, my stomach was a little upset, and I'd say to Evelyn, my stomach's bothering me a little bit, and I know good and well what I should do, but as humans, I forgot because she'd say, "Did you take a teaspoon of baking soda and water?" Oh, okay. And that would solve the problem.
Mhm.
But it's so easy, something that simple, to forget about it. And that I think a lot of it has to do with us always frequency helping on the big things in life, the flashing lights and the things that excite us and all that. And when it comes down to the basics of life, it's all about giving thanks about having heartbeat in your veins,
Right.
breath in your lungs, and giving thanks for the friends and family in your life and your cats that love you. And your cat is saying, "Show me some love. Get off that TV. I don't see anybody. I've been looking at that TV for months now. I still don't see one person other than your buddy Jim."
Well, Jim, it's better than it used to be. They used to all come in.
I know it.
When they were
I
young,
know
they
it.
used to all come in. Now it's only two of
Yeah.
them.
Everybody thought we were selling cats there for a while.
Oh, goodness.
But
Well, Jim,
ladies
we're
and
out of time.
oh yes, ladies and gentlemen, our time is gone. We'll be back tomorrow. Donna and I will be, and we want to personally thank you for all the folks that, because we've got a huge following on Apple. And we're just so honored because we realize you could spend your time out of your busy day watching something else, but to invite us into your home or onto your laptop or into your phone. Thank you so
Into your
much.
life. Into your
Yes,
life.
Donna said it better than I did. I was still in the electronic world. She's in the communication world. But anyway, we hope and pray that you always remember to love yourself first. That is so critical. You deserve that. You have the right to love yourself first. You have the right because that is a universal gift from the Senior in the sky, the creator of this universe. It's a universal law. Love yourself first. If no one else loves you, so what? You are worthy of being loved. You really, truly are, because you're that special to the Creator. If you're not that special, then why did He give you a set of fingerprints that will not match anybody else on planet Earth?
Right.
That's how special you are. Don't let anybody beat you up or chew you up or put you down just to make their pitiful life make them feel better about themselves. Love them enough to forgive them and let them go their way and let them enjoy themselves being miserable, because that's not who you are. You were born to be a winner. You were born to be loved. You were born to love, to enjoy the love and the abundance of the universe.
Right.
And no one can stop you. No one can reach in and grab it and take that from you, because that's yours. It's a gift from the Creator. And Donna and I, we just hope and pray that you and your loved ones are blessed and healthy in all areas of your life. Thank you so much for tuning in. We love you as humans, and we just appreciate you for who you are. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye, folks.